Good afternoon. In this video, I want to put out a question for those who reject the gap. Where do you place evil? How do you place evil coming in before Genesis 3? Genesis 3, we see a serpent showing up and tempting Adam and Eve, Adam and woman. And we have to be able to place in the narrative of Genesis 1, Genesis 2, there's no discussion of anything, any evil in the universe. But clearly by Genesis 3 there is. We knew who that serpent is. We know the first prophecy that Christ would crush the seed is referring to serpent, to Satan and his children, which are all unbelievers, by the way, from in Ephesians 2. So the reality is that those who are mocking a gap between Genesis 1, 1, and 1, 2 have to come up with some other explanation of where evil came in, or simply ignore it. If you want to just ignore the narrative and ignore it, which they're trying to do, then of course then you've got a big gap in your own theology, which doesn't seem to be a problem to these people. They just want to ignore it and then pretend that those who are advocating the gap are just making this stuff out of thin air. The reality is we're dealing with a serious question that evil had to come into the universe before Genesis 3. That's what Genesis 3 tells us. So the idea, yeah, you can go through Genesis 1 and 2 with no problem and not have any understanding or an issue with a gap. But when you get to Genesis 3, you got a gap issue problem. You got something that happened before Genesis 3. You have the fall of Satan, the fall of Lucifer, and that sin was pride. So you're going to have to find some way of explaining how evil came into the universe before Genesis 3. And so those who just want to brush aside the idea of a gap and say, well, this couldn't happen, and that's the narrative in Genesis 1:1 and Genesis chapter 1, chapter 2. You don't need that in there. You got to put something. You got to explain Genesis 3. You got to explain how evil came into the universe before Adam fell. That's the serpent who was tempting Adam. The power behind it was Satan. And that's how we know from the Genesis 3:15 that the first proclamation of the gospel was going to happen about the seed crushing Satan's head. So again, I welcome any theories that the anti-gappers can put forth, but likely they're going to ignore it. They're just going to ignore the reality of evil coming to the universe and then move on. It seems they just rather ignore a problem than address it and deal with it. But the reality is they have to explain their responsibility. Theologians' responsibility, a pastor's responsibility, a teacher's responsibility is to explain the whole counsel of God, all the scriptures. And when you got a problem, when someone reaching Genesis 3 and reads all of a sudden a serpent showing up out of nowhere that's tempting Adam and Eve, and then the Genesis 3:15 where you talk about crushing the serpent's head. 3:15, when I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And we know that's a pre-cross prophecy there. And so obviously the serpent seed is representing all unbelievers that are going to come, they're going to be children of Satan because they remain unbelievers. And so that's the seed. It's Satan's head is going to be crushed. So again, explain where this came from, explain where evil came into the universe and how it came in the universe without putting a gap in somewhere in the narrative. And I look forward to those explanations. Or more likely, you'll just probably ignore it and just say it's unimportant, when in fact you have to explain. The reality is you need to explain where evil shows up before Genesis 3. Amen. Thank you.